Just in time for Halloween 2022, we have a brand new Hellraiser adaptation directed by David Bruckner, who's been involved with The Night House, The Ritual, and VHS, just to name a few movies, all of which I really love and enjoy. So you can imagine I was very happy to hear that he was the man behind the director's seat for the Hellraiser adaptation in 2022. Starring Odessa as Zion and Jamie Clayton as the iconic horror character Pinhead, who for the first time ever is now a female in the Hellraiser series. But we'll get into that a bit more later on. Odessa as Zion plays Riley, a recovering addict who met a boyfriend in rehabilitation, and the pair decide to make some fast cash with a robbery. But once they arrive to the location, break open the safe, all they find is a box. And you guessed it, it is the Lament configuration, the puzzle box that we're all familiar with from other Hellraiser films. But this film does it different, and this is something that the film actually does very well. It enhances the old puzzle box. We still definitely recognize the old puzzle box, but it has different configurations, and in this Hellraiser, every time you solve a configuration, a little blade will stick out, and in order for the Xenobites to actually be summoned and attack you, the little blade needs to cut you. So as you solve a configuration, the little blade needs to actually get some of your blood. It needs to stab you. It needs some of your blood in order to conjure these demonic, interdimensional, hellish beings, the Xenobites. The new design respects and pays homage to the original puzzle box, which I love, but also enhances it. Now, sometimes changes like this can work for the better, and sometimes they can fail miserably. I'm happy to report that everything in Hellraiser, including the puzzle box, expands upon the original aspects of the films and actually does make certain things better. The puzzle box is one, and also the design of the Xenobites themselves I thought was phenomenal. There are no more leather bondage type attire for the Xenobites. That's right, their entire look, the aesthetic look and their costumes are purely designed using their own skin. So without giving too much away, I'll let you all watch the film. But I think it's another positive step forward, paying tribute to the original films with the different kind of mutations and altered looks to the Xenobites, but also taking something new and definitely improving upon the original costume ideas. Now, while we're talking about positives, there are some negatives, and these aren't really that negative. They're kind of more my own personal nitpicks, but you can all tell me what you think in the comments down below. There are two negatives for me for this movie. Number one is not enough Pinhead. A lot of reviewers haven't mentioned this, at least not reviews that I've seen, but I feel like I'm kind of happy that they took their time to introduce Pinhead, who's the iconic character in the Hellraiser franchise. And for the first time ever, it's a female taking the helm of Pinhead. So everyone's very curious to see this brand new Pinhead and determine whether or not it works and whether they like the new Pinhead, because Doug Bradley has been Pinhead for most of the Hellraiser films, and every time he wasn't, the films were quite terrible. So it's quite risky having a new Pinhead actor to begin with, but also even more so by changing the gender. So does it work? Yes, it does. Jamie Clayton is phenomenal as Pinhead, but you have to wait over an hour just to feast your eyes on Pinhead for the first time, which I don't mind. I really don't mind waiting an hour. It teases the audience. I appreciate that. That's totally fine. But once we are introduced to Pinhead, I just feel like, I don't know whether this was changed on the cutting room floor, whether it was just the way that it was edited and for some reason they decided to exclude some additional Pinhead scenes. I'm not too sure. It just feels like, I've seen the movie twice now, by the way, properly, and then flicked through it, for review purposes, just for a refresher. But I definitely have not changed my mind that I feel like there could have been a lot more Pinhead in this. It's not necessarily a really bad negative. I just feel like the movie would have flourished even further if we did see some more Pinhead in the flick. Hopefully now that they've introduced the new female lead as Pinhead. Maybe if there is a Hellraiser 2, which I really hope there is, because this was really fantastic. I loved this Hellraiser adaptation. I hope that they can learn from this and perhaps include a bit more Pinhead action. The other thing, again, it's a nitpick of mine, and even though there are some great gruesome deaths in this, I feel like the gore wasn't quite hardcore enough. Hellraiser, particularly the first three, which I enjoy the most, and they're the favourites in the entire series, and this is on par with 1, 2, and 3. This is how much I like the new one. They get almost everything right, but you can definitely notice, to summarize it in a word, it's not as gross. When I watched Hellraiser for the first time, I was grossed out. I saw things in horror films that I'd never seen before, and I was very young at the time. I must have been maybe 12, 13 or so when I watched Hellraiser for the first time. So for a young man, watching a flick where the gore's ramped up, such as in the original Hellraiser with the practical effects and everything, and Frank being totally skinless up in the attic, and a lot of skin stretching with chains and hooks and shit going on, it's pretty full on and gross, but that's what most people enjoy about Hellraiser. Now again, it's a very small thing to pick on, but it's definitely noticeable. If you're a big fan of the Hellraiser franchise, you'll notice that the actual gore isn't quite as hardcore as the old ones. But again, there are some awesome creative deaths in this. There's blood aplenty. You won't be super disappointed, but it's definitely noticeable that it's not quite as grotesque as the original. So the negatives aren't even serious negatives. I'm not attacking this movie in any way, and it will not, absolutely will not drop the score that I have in my mind for the new Hellraiser. This is a great adaptation. For once, reimagining or remaking a movie works. It's clearly directed and made and written by people that are fans of the original, people that understand what the audience wants to see, paying tribute and respecting the original films, the good ones anyway, and then expanding upon it further and even improving upon some aspects from the originals for this new remake. So I am proud to give Hellraiser 2022 a well-deserved 12 out of 13 on Bannock's Evil scale. This is a must-watch for Halloween 2020. If you're watching this from the future and you haven't seen the movie yet, go ahead and watch it. It's definitely worthy of a watch for any Hellraiser and horror fan. I was a little concerned. I don't like when they do remakes on horror favorites or movie favorites for that matter, because majority of the time they fail and the movies are screwed up big time. This one, I'm proud to report that it does not fail at all. It succeeds in every area possible. I was a little bit concerned and a little bit skeptical, but David Bruckner has hit this one out of the park. What are you waiting for? Go and watch the brand new Hellraiser now.